Welcome. Thank you for your patience in this hot heat, bloody hot heat, I would say, and also during our technical mishaps, but everything's on track. And yeah, I want to welcome you all to the factory who has helped us put on this event, along with a thriving menstrual health ecosystem. I just want to thank you all for being here. So to get started, I wanted to just see a raise of hands. How many of you knew about your period before you got it? And those who don't have periods, how many of you knew about it before your peers got it? Okay, good number. Was it from, keep those hands down, was it from your mother? Okay, was it from your friends? Was it from the classroom? Okay. So the reason I ask these questions is because this is a worldwide problem. A lot of people want to talk about menstrual health in terms of it being just something that happens over there or in other parts of the world. And a 2016 study revealed of girls in India that almost half didn't know about their periods before they got them. In Kenya, we see a similar situation of 46% of women not knowing or not having everything they needed to manage their period. And the reason I bring this up is because a lot of the work that has started with menstrual hygiene management was really to address the issues in developing countries. But as a show of hands here, and also from very personal experiences, we see that menstrual health is a global issue. No matter how developed the country is, there are stigmas, problems with education, access to affordable materials, and that is a problem rampantly worldwide. Luckily, there are lots of organizations all around the world that have been working to address this issue. Whether they're doing that from an international development angle, such as water, sanitation, and hygiene, so taking care of sanitation and hygiene facilities, or really looking at it from an education and research perspective and introducing products with education, or from a business perspective and really offering something beyond products such as tampons and pads. There's a lot of work that's going on. The problem is that none of this fits into one category. And this is the issue with menstrual health, is that it's omnipresent, right? It's not just the bleeding days. It's a constant thing that is going on from menarche, when you first get it, to menopause when it ends, but then another cycle starts. So that's the reason why there's the drop in the middle, because it's hard to stick everything into one category. So let me tell you a little bit about who we are and what the Menstrual Health Hub is really trying to do. The Menstrual Health Hub is a platform for the exchange of information around 4 areas: research, education and learning, policy, and innovation. And the idea is to connect all of these different players, all these different sectors, whether they're working in developing countries, whether they're working here in Germany, whether they're working anywhere around the world, however they're working on it. We want to strengthen the collective impact around menstrual health and take away the taboo, ensure that there's market choices for women, girls, and those who menstruate. And to that point, make the conversation around menstrual health gender exclusive. So this is who we are. We establish strategic partnerships. We work globally, and this is our first event here in Germany of this scale. And we're really excited to bring together the multiple partners we've met throughout our journey. So on our site, you can find a Global Registry where we have already 250 organizations who have registered. They're working all around the world, and those little colors are really showing like if it's a social enterprise, if it's more of an NGO, if it's an educator. So it's pretty cool to see that there is actually a lot of work going on around the world. And if you know people working in the space, please invite them to join the registry, because all we want to do is capture who is doing what, where, around the world, and how. There's really no convening force right now that's able to show how this issue is being addressed and from what perspective. So a little bit about here's our video. So thanks to the factory, we were able to find an amazing videographer with a generous grant from the Pollination Project. Lily and her team. Please give it up for Lily. So the reason this is such a momentous occasion for us is because we've really been a bootstrapping startup and worked really hard to get a $1,000 grant to make a video. And as you know, that is not a lot of money. So with Lily and her team, we were able to put together something that we're quite excited about, which we can also show you later.
You don't have it?
It's on the stick.
It's on the stick.
Right up there. In the corner.
Ah!
Sorry. Yeah.
Technical issues.
Yeah, NGO people are not necessarily tech people, so your patience is much appreciated.
Come on.
Nope, that's not the right one.
No. Right.
The one on the bottom.
Ah. Well, the lid is already open.
Did everyone call their videos MH Hub video though?
Yes.
Okay. If this doesn't work, then we can, let's just move on.
Slow. They need to think.
No, don't touch it.
Ta-da!
I need you to go back to my presentation right after this.
Yeah.
Menstruation may be a natural biological function, yet it continues to hold millions of women, girls, and those who menstruate back. Luckily, there are thousands working to make menstrual health matter. Unfortunately, many are doing so in sectors and silos, duplicating efforts and competing for resources. The Menstrual Health Hub is a social and digital platform designed to connect and strengthen those affected by and those interested in menstrual health.
Thank you, and thank you to the people who appeared in the video as well, and everyone that was part of that. I don't want to bore you with stuff about our organization, because what it's really about is the menstrual movement and what exactly the menstrual movement is and how it's really risen in parallel with all of these other women's empowerment movements and settings going on. So these 4 areas is the way that the Menstrual Health Hub tracks progress, and this is the 4 areas that I want to focus on in describing some of the ways the menstrual movement has really taken off in the last 3 to 5 years. I can't tell you everything that's been happening. I do have it all in my head, but for time's sake, I don't think you want to sit here for 2 weeks while I talk about menstruation the past few years. So starting off, I think it's really important that we look at these 4 pillars and understand that research and education really undergird everything that's happened in this space. Without understanding what the issue is, how few people know about their own bodies, how many are not going to school, there's really not a lot that can be done in terms of funders and donors garnering resources towards addressing the problem. Everything starts with education as well. Without that basic social support network or system, without understanding what the menstrual cycle is and what happens to the body, it can be a pretty frightening experience. Then we move on to policy and how different governments all around the world have been addressing the issue in the last few years, mostly from a water, sanitation, and hygiene perspective, but also recently in terms of menstrual equity and access. And then lastly, innovation. And I think this is the most exciting part for a Berlin-based audience and the organizations here. So first, with research, we can't really move forward without menstrual health, menstrual cycle, without giving kudos to the Society for Menstrual Cycle Research, which is an organization that started in 1977 of researchers mostly interested in the socio-dynamics of menstruation. So this is a picture from the conference last year. They've celebrated 40 years, and if you want to check out more about the types of research that they've been doing, you can check out their website. Another thing to mention is the real drive of the water, sanitation, and hygiene space. And these are some of the researchers who have really been pushing the issue. Marnie Summer, if any of you are menstrual scholars, probably know her name quite well, as well as a few of these other, Bethany Caruso, Penny Phillips Howard. They've really been working hard to lift the voices of girls and bring them into the research to actually put meaning to the qualitative value and have policy and actions be implemented based on what girls want, what girls are really experiencing. So most of the research has been very limited. It's been focused on Africa and South Asia, so there's not a lot happening in other parts of the world. We see big red spaces in Latin America and other parts. There's just a real focus, particularly on East Africa and India. But there are common challenges that are constantly experienced across all different cultures. And what themes have always come up, no matter what, is the fear of embarrassment and teasing by peers and the fear of leaking. And I think this is maybe something we can all empathize with in our own experiences. If you want to have further information about this research aspect, there is a conference that happens every year virtually called the MHMWINs Conference, which stands for Menstrual Hygiene Management in Washington Schools Conference. And essentially it takes a lot of the international development work that's currently happening and puts it online for all sorts of people to engage with. I think last year there was over 3,000 participants from multiple countries, so it's pretty cool to see the different development interventions that are happening. The PMA 2020 study is really looking at like using evidence-based research to actually figure out how bad or good the situation is in particular countries. This is kind of the most comprehensive body of research that's come up yet. And then this FSG study, which used menstrual health for the very first time in 2016 to refer to this work. What's important to remember is that a lot of this research has really been rooted in water, sanitation, and hygiene advocacy led by WSSCC, UNICEF, and WaterAid, and under the guise of menstrual hygiene management, which is a term that's still used now to refer to the topic on today's Menstrual Hygiene Day. In terms of education and learning, there's been some really great progress, especially around social media and social awareness. Also getting kind of creative and teaching not only in the classroom, but outside of the classroom, having games and fun exercises to kind of take the edge off of it being such an embarrassing topic. So when I talk about education, there's really two areas that that we need to think about. One is the individual classroom education, so materials that you actually engage with, and then education on a large scale. So societal awareness raising and kind of pop culture mainstreaming, as we say. These are a few of the pretty cool educational resources that are out there. This is from the American Girl. I don't know if anyone is from the States, but there was these dolls called American Girls back in the 90s. And they came out with this book, The Care and Keeping of You, which turned out to be one of the few resources around menstrual health and hygiene at the time in the 90s. Then there's these books that are specifically created for different countries. This one's from Tanzania, but the website is called Grow and Know, and that is a project of Marnie Summer, who's one of the main researchers. And then Menstrupedia is a really fun comic that's started by an organization in India. They've translated their comics into 9 different languages now, so you can check out their website if comics is an interesting way for you to want to teach about menstruation and menstrual health. So moving over to that awareness raising side, I wanted to point special attention to a good friend of mine, Cass Clemmer, who has really done an amazing job the last few years at raising awareness about the fact that menstruation is not just a women and girls issue, that not all women and girls menstruate, and not all that menstruate are women and girls. And this is really important when we talk about this issue, because there is a lot of people that experience pain or isolation and aren't recognized. And so, you know, it's kind of hard to talk about menstruation without saying women and girls, but what we do at the Menstrual Health Hub and what we encourage all of our partners to do is have an asterisk or something when there's a reference to women and girls that kind of makes this exclusive or makes it very clear that it's for everyone. So Cass created these 2 characters called Tony the Tampon, and I think her name is Milena, the menstrual cup, and Cass turned it into a coloring book, and then also has their own advocacy. This picture went viral in 2017, actually, with Periods Are Not Just for Women. If you'd like to learn more about that, I'm happy to connect you with Cass. So one thing that really comes to the fore with education and awareness raising is this woman, Gloria Steinem. So she's kind of like a feminist pioneer in the 70s, and she wrote an essay for Ms. Magazine in the 70s. If men could menstruate, menstruation would be an enviable, boast-worthy masculine event. Men would brag about how long and how much. Boys would mark the onset of menses, that longed-for proof of manhood, with religious ritual and stag parties. Congress would fund a National Institute of Dysmenorrhea to stamp out monthly discomforts. Sanitary supplies would be federally funded and free. So I saw her give this a few years ago at the Society for Menstrual Cycle Research, and something that she said that was really interesting is she said there's power in illuminations. So what she did simply was just turn something on its head, something everyday and normal for women, girls, and those who menstruate, for the other gender. And I think that when we do this, we really see where inequalities exist. And it's funny because she kind of predicted the things that now the menstrual health agenda is really focused on, particularly access to sanitary products. It wouldn't be fair to talk about education and awareness raising without talking about Menstrual Hygiene Day, which is today. So everyone, congratulate yourselves. We've come out for the 5th annual Menstrual Hygiene Day. It was started in 2014 by Wash United, which is a Berlin-based social impact organization here, and it has really grown over the past few years. There's hundreds of events that happen every year in multiple countries with banners and people waving flags and drums and doing dances. If you check out their website, you can see, or on Facebook actually, it's more live, you can see all of the awesome stuff that's happening around the world. And there'll be pictures of this event too. So, What's really interesting is 2015 was labeled the year of the period, and this is where the slew of events kind of happened. I don't know if you remember on social media, but there was a poet and artist named Ruby Kaur who posted a picture on Instagram, this picture exactly, of her bleeding on her bed. Instagram took it down twice, saying it was inappropriate content, and she put it up a third time, and then it caused this viral hoopla. So this was a major turn of events in terms of what is inappropriate content, right? The following month, Kiran Gandhi, she's a musician and activist. She ran the London Marathon, free bleeding. She turned up to the finish line with blood all inside of her exercise pants, and said she just didn't feel like wearing anything. She didn't want to chafe, she didn't want to stop to change her tampon, and this was also a big moment, a menstrual moment as we call it. In July, the Canadian government took away the tampon tax, although it's a tax on all sanitary products, not just tampons. And this led the way because this is one of the first countries after Kenya to do this on a real big national level. In August, before the election, this presidential candidate made a comment. You could see that there was blood coming out of her eyes, blood coming out of her wherever. This also contributed to the fact that menstruation is so stigmatized, really releasing a lot of anger on the part of the public for what he said. And then later that year, Thinx, which is a underwear company that makes period-proof undies, they launched a campaign for the New York Metropolitan Transit Authority that used images like this, and the New York Transit Authority wouldn't allow the campaign to run because it said periods on it. So this, like the Ruby Kaur incident, kind of snowballed into a public awareness issue, which got a lot of people heated and upset, and eventually they were able to pretty much like scour all the Brooklyn stations with their ads, and they're doing quite well right now, actually. Moving into policy, there's been a lot of things that have happened in the last few years. It's really, really snowballed. But in 2005, the government of Nepal banned a practice called Chapatti. Chapatti is an age-old practice where women and girls are supposed to sleep in a separate encampment, whether that's an animal shed or an own shed. The idea is that women are impure during that time. They should not be with the rest of the family in the house. So despite the fact that this was made or banned in 2005, the practice still continued because Nepal is a very unterschiedlich, different type of terrain. Diverse terrain with lots of small communities, making it hard to actually implement laws and rules. In 2010, this was a big moment. The human right to water and sanitation was recognized as a human right by the UN General Assembly. This provided a huge foundation for menstruation, menstrual health, menstrual hygiene to actually become an issue of discussion, that women and girls and those who menstruate actually need sanitary facilities because of their monthly menses. So this provided, and you can speak more to Ms. Virginia Rolfe here if you'd like to learn more about the human right to water and sanitation, since she's an expert in it. And fast forward, there's been a lot of policies, but I only want to focus on a few here. In 2017, the president of Kenya signed a bill into law that makes the provision of sanitary pads and like a whole mechanism around how the sanitary pads are distributed in education mandatory in Kenya. This was signed into law, but it has not technically been implemented yet. So there's a big divide between policy creation and policy implementation. But we have friends in Kenya that are working hard to push this and make sure that something comes of it. And also in 2017, the government, not only they realized that their ban in 2005 didn't really work, and in 2017 they actually starting to criminalize chapatti, which means that it can be considered a federal offense to continue the practice. We did a short analysis of the different policies that have come up in the last few years, and a lot of them are around WASH and education, and more happening around menstrual equity, which is a term that has only come up in the past few years from a woman in the US named Jennifer Weiss-Wolf, who has been a firecracker in the menstrual health space, pushing legislation forward that refers to kind of access to menstrual products and materials as a matter of being able to participate in civic life. And this has been a real foundation that's helped, I think, 23 different states in the United States either get rid of their tampon tax or provide pads and tampons and other materials to homeless women, women in shelters, and possibly girls in schools as well. So lastly, and this will finish up this little segment, innovation progress has really been driven originally by the people that can fund it. So we are all kind of startup people, maybe, hopefully, and we know that getting things funded is really difficult, and there's a real reliance on grants in the beginning, especially if it's a social project. So big shout out to Grand Challenges Canada. They've been a real mover in the space. Also, the Case for Her is a brand new investment portfolio that's just focused on women and girls issues. They're starting with the case for menstruation, then they're moving into the case for fertility, then the case for menopause, and then lastly, the case for female pleasure. So if you or anyone you know is looking for getting a project funded, we can talk more about that because they are awesome and they've been a supporter of ours as well. And then more and more VCs, so venture capital firms. We've seen this more as femtech has started to rise, especially in light of Clue's success. And this is really encouraging to see that women's health issues are being taken seriously in those boardrooms. But it's kind of crazy that it's taken this long for this to happen. In terms of products, the drive towards innovation beyond just disposable pads and tampons has really been a result of awareness raising around environmental concerns, how much waste is created, the health effects, what's inside tampons and pads. And this has really been people feel empowered because of the knowledge that they have gained in the last few years, either about the products or about themselves. And this we will be talking about later with our other presentations. And then also when we move into femtech, the power of data and technology and how far that goes, and maybe we'll be talking about that a little bit later too. A few small innovations, I'll go through them. There's too many to count, but just a short highlight reel. In 2006, this man, Menstrual Man, he, maybe you've heard of this movie that came out last year called Patman. This guy, everyone thought he was crazy because he wanted to create a pad that worked in India, so he like created a goat's bladder to stick into his pocket so that he could emulate menstruation, so that he could create a pad that worked, because all the women he asked were like, "You're a weirdo, you're a freak, we don't want to help you with this thing that you're obsessed with." He eventually did come up with a machine that is now being sold for small enterprises and women collectives to make their own pads and sell them in their communities. In 2010, AfriPads was founded. AfriPads is an organization, company out of Uganda that makes reusable sanitary pads. They have a really wonderful business model where they partner with organizations to distribute their pads. And one thing about AfriPads that's really interesting is that they worked with the Ugandan government for the first time a few weeks ago to actually create standards for reusable pads. So in a lot of countries, you can't even bring these things in because there's no national standards to say this is a good pad, this is a bad pad, this is a good cup, this is a bad cup. And one of Mariana's favorite stories, she said, you have to tell that story tonight, is a friend of ours who runs the Cup Effect. They were bringing menstrual cups into Malawi, and they brought in, I don't know, 200 or 300 cups, and you're not allowed to bring cups into a place like Malawi because there's no standards for it. So they get to the customs, and the guy opens up the box, and he's like, okay, explain, what are these? And Mandu goes, yeah, they're an agricultural product. They're made for cows' udders to stop the milk. And he's like, oh yeah, and, he sticks it and he starts poking it, and he's like, okay, all right, it's fine. And so that's how they got menstrual cups into the company for this small pilot program that they did. But hopefully with the progress in Uganda, we will also see that there will be more and more choice for people around the world. I already talked a little bit about this, the Thanks ad campaign, and Ruby Cup also kind of operates in a similar way as AfriPads. Ruby Cup was kind of founded here in Berlin by Femina Emily's co-founder Maxi, but they operate worldwide, mostly in East Africa and Barcelona. They work through partnerships to distribute their menstrual cups and pair that with education. So moving into our presentations of all of our lovely Berlin-based menstrual health enterprises, it's really important that we talk about innovation beyond just products. So beyond the commercial products that get thrown into the trash, looking into technology, into innovative business models, into innovative marketing and education. I think innovative education is really where it's at, because you can't have hardware without software. You need to have both those things together to affect impact. And also, innovation also means reaching the marginalized. So people with disabilities or people really at the ends of society, where are the products, where is the education, where is all of that information tailored to them? So this is a little kind of grid that I quickly created of some organizations that are killing it in femtech, also with business models, marketing and awareness raising campaigns, and then reaching the marginalized. This Kila Cup just went through its crowdfunding campaign, and it's a menstrual cup that operates like a tampon in terms of being able to pull it out, because they found that menstrual cups had a really high barrier for some people to use, especially if they had interesting shaped cervixes. And then this Kahani Mahiniki, this is an educational model of how the female reproductive system works for blind women, girls, and other people. So you're able to feel around how things work. We're going to now hear from 8 different enterprises / organizations / ass-kicking organizations in this order. First from Femna and the Female Company. So these are products created for women and girls and those who menstruate across the life cycle. And then we'll move into Medulla, which really focuses on education and cycle awareness. Then we'll hear from Super Izzy, which is question and answer best friend chat bot around sexual and reproductive health. And then Ina, which is natural contraception. Clue, which is a menstrual cycle female health tracking app. Luna, which is natural pain remedy for periods, focusing on acupressure and information. And then last but very not least, Crafts and Cramps, which is the artistic expression and awareness raising of periods. So I'm going to transfer my mic over to Emily, and thank you all for sitting through my long talk. So this concludes the event as such, but I wanted to make a few last words. First of all, thank you so much to all of the organizations and enterprises that decided to accept our invitation. We thought this is actually my co-founder Mariana's idea, we should have an event on Menstrual Hygiene Day. I said, maybe, yeah, okay, maybe. Think anyone will come? So it's really delightful to see so many new and old faces. Second, just today, we launched the Menstrual Health Hub Hive. So under those 4 pillars that I talked about earlier, research, education, policy, and innovation, we have a slew of new content, over 170 research pieces, over 150 innovations, many more policies, and the other education. And I wanted to give special thanks to Enrico, who I've been working with as our web developer, who's really helped us so tremendously put this together. So big thanks. And also big thanks to Juliana, another member of the Menstrual Health Hub. She's been our creative whiz and helped with the design of the flyer. And Celine, who's just our right-hand woman for everything. And then last but very not least, Mariana de la Rocha. I would be sitting in the ground somewhere without her. So thank you so much for everything you've done.